What if the real reason your marriage feels confusing, heavy, or unpredictable has nothing to do with your partner at all? What if the arguments you keep having, the distance you feel, the fears you hide, and the reactions you can't control are actually echoes from a childhood you never healed? Imagine discovering that the person who gets scared, defensive, angry, or silent in your relationship isn't the adult you are today. It's the child you once were, still trying to feel safe in a world that once hurt them. What if every moment you thought was your partner's fault was actually your past whispering through your present? And what if changing your marriage doesn't start with fixing them, but finally understanding you? Today I'm going to take you on a journey, not into your relationship, but into your inner world, your memories, your emotional blueprints. Because once you see how your childhood is silently shaping the way you love, everything in your marriage begins to make sense. Stay with me till the end, because this might be the moment you realize your marriage isn't broken. It's just waiting for the healed version of you to finally show up. What if the way you love today has nothing to do with your partner and everything to do with the little child you once were? What if every argument, every silence, every fear of losing someone, every need for reassurance is not a flaw in your marriage, but a fingerprint from your childhood quietly controlling your adult life? Most people think childhood is something you grow out of, but the truth is more shocking. You never grow out of it, you grow around it, and those emotional cracks you never filled become the exact places where your marriage bleeds. Imagine this: when you were a child and you cried, did someone hold you, or did someone tell you to stop making drama? When you were scared, did someone sit with you, or did you learn to swallow your fear alone? When you achieved something, were you celebrated, or were you ignored because someone was too busy, too stressed, too tired to notice? Whatever your answer is, that became your emotional blueprint. The silent instructions your heart still follows today. You didn't choose it, you inherited it. So now when your partner forgets something small, you don't just feel disappointed, you feel abandoned. When they don't text back immediately, you don't just feel annoyed, you feel unimportant. When they raise their voice, you don't just hear anger, you hear danger. These reactions aren't random, they are emotional echoes from a childhood moment. Your mind forgot, but your body still remembers. Your nervous system reacts faster than your logic because the child inside you learned what love felt like long before you understood what love truly was. And here's the part most people never realize. You are not arguing with your partner, you're arguing with your past. You're not afraid of losing them. You're afraid of reliving the pain you swore you'd never feel again. You're not overthinking because of the relationship. You're overthinking because you learned early that you had to scan for danger to survive emotionally. It's shocking to admit, but the love you express today is written by a version of you who didn't even know what love meant. And until you face that child, understand them, listen to them, and finally comfort them in ways no one could back then, you will keep repeating patterns that never belong to your adult self. What if every time you feel your partner pulling away, it's not them distancing, but your childhood replaying itself in real time? What if the anxiety you feel when they don't call back, the urge to shut down during conflict, the habit of over-explaining, over-loving, over-apologizing, none of it actually started in your marriage? What if these patterns were quietly written into your heart long before you even knew what love was? Most people never realize how early attachment styles are formed. They think their reactions are about this relationship, this moment, or this person. But the shocking truth is that your nervous system learned how safe or unsafe love feels by the time you were 7 years old, and the way you attach to your partner today is simply the adult version of how you attach to the people who raised you. If your caregivers were unpredictable, warm one moment and cold the next, you grew into the person who fears inconsistency more than anything. So now when your partner is busy, tired, or distracted, your mind doesn't think they're occupied. It thinks, I'm losing them. Your childhood taught you survival, not stability. If your caregivers were emotionally distant, if they told you you're too sensitive or stop crying, you learned to suppress your needs. So now as an adult, you avoid conflict, you stay quiet, you pretend things don't hurt. Not because you're strong, but because you learned early that your emotions were a burden. And if your caregivers were loving and present, but overwhelmed or unavailable at times, you became the person who tries to fix everything, please everyone, earn affection through effort. That pattern follows you into marriage like a shadow you never asked for. Here's the most shocking part: your partner. Your partner's behavior isn't always the trigger. Your memory is. Their silence reminds you of someone else's silence. Their anger reminds you of someone else's anger. Their distance reminds you of a feeling you swore you'd never feel again. Your heart isn't reacting to your partner, it's reacting to a familiar wound. Attachment isn't romance, attachment is survival. And you learned how to survive in a world where love was not always predictable until you understand the original story your body is trying to protect you from. You'll keep misreading the present through the lens of your past. What if the argument you had today wasn't really about what happened today, but about something that happened to you years before your partner even existed? What if the pain you feel in certain moments of your marriage isn't coming from your partner's words, but from wounds you never realized were still open? What if the thing you think you've moved on from is secretly controlling every reaction you have? Unresolved childhood wounds don't disappear. They grow quiet, they hide, they disguise themselves as, I'm just like this, and then they explode the moment something feels familiar. You think your partner's tone triggered you, but it wasn't their tone. It was the memory of being yelled at by someone who was supposed to protect you. You think your partner's forgetfulness upset you, but it wasn't the forgotten task, it was the feeling of being invisible growing up. You think your partner's silence hurt you, but it wasn't the silence, it was the fear of abandonment you learned the first time someone walked away emotionally. Your partner touches the wound, but they didn't create it. Childhood pain lives inside the body like a ghost, unseen, unheard, but constantly influencing your emotional reactions. A small misunderstanding becomes a threat. A tiny delay feels like rejection. A normal disagreement feels like danger. And the most shocking part is that your mind might not remember the moment that hurt you, but your nervous system remembers everything. Every fear, every humiliation, every lonely night, every broken promise. Your body stored it all. So now when your partner says something that reminds, your inner child of those old moments, you react with intensity that even you can't explain. You cry harder than the situation demands. You shut down faster than the moment requires. You overthink longer than logic can justify. You aren't reacting as an adult. You're reacting as the child who never got closure. And here's the painful truth most people avoid. You're not triggered by the present. You're triggered by the past still living inside you. Your marriage becomes the stage where old wounds demand to be acknowledged, not because your partner is hurting you, but because life keeps giving you chances to heal what you never faced. You can't change the wound by blaming your partner. You can only change it by finally turning inward and giving that younger version of you the understanding, safety, and love they never received when they needed it most. What if the way you fight, the way you communicate, the way you shut down, or the way you chase love was never truly yours to begin with? What if you're not reacting as yourself, but as the child who grew up watching love in its rawest, most unfiltered form inside your home? What if the patterns you promised you'd never repeat became the habits you now live by without noticing? The truth is shocking. You don't become who you want to be, you become what you witnessed. Your home wasn't just a place you lived in, it was the first classroom where you learned how two people love, argue, apologize, or avoid each other. And your nervous system absorbed it all, even the things you thought you forgot. If you grew up in a house where conflict meant shouting, slamming doors, or silence that lasted days, your body learned that love is unsafe. So now when your partner raises a concern, you go into defense mode instantly, not because they're attacking you, but because your body is replaying the war zone you grew up in. If you saw your parents bottle up emotions, avoid tough conversations, or pretend everything was fine, you learn to hide your feelings too. So now you smile through your pain, stay strong, and break silently inside because expressing sadness once felt dangerous. If affection was rare in your home, compliments unusual and comfort scarce, you learn to survive on emotional crumbs. So in marriage, you don't ask for more love. You convince yourself you don't need it. You teach yourself to be low maintenance, even when your heart is starving. If you witness manipulation, silent treatments, or guilt tripping growing up, you learn these behaviors as normal relationship tools. Even when you swore you'd never turn into them, your nervous system repeats what it knows, not what you wish. And here's the painful twist. Even if your childhood home looked calm from the outside, emotional chaos can still live inside you. A parent who is always stressed, always tired, or always unavailable teaches you to overfunction in relationships, to be the fixer, the pleaser, the peacemaker, the one who must earn love to feel safe. You don't realize it, but your marriage is often a reflection of the home you came from. You think you're choosing your reactions, but Most of the time, your childhood is choosing for you. And until you recognize which patterns are yours and which were handed to you, you will keep repeating a love story that never belonged to you. What if the version of you reacting in your marriage isn't the grown, mature, logical adult, but the scared, lonely, unheard child you once were? What if every time you raise your voice, shut down, over-apologize, over-explain, or chase after someone who's pulling away, it's not your present self acting, it's the younger you begging to feel safe again? What if the real battle in your relationship isn't between you and your partner, but between the adult you want to be and the child you've never healed? The truth is shocking. Your inner child makes decisions faster than your adult mind can, especially in moments of stress, conflict, or fear. When your partner says something that feels dismissive, the adult in you tries to understand, but the child in you remembers every moment you felt ignored. When your partner needs space, the adult tries to stay calm, but the child inside panics, terrified of being left alone. When your partner disagrees with you, the adult thinks logically, but the child hears rejection and starts defending, attacking, or shutting down. Your inner child chooses your reactions before your adult self even realizes what happened. If you grew up needing to be perfect, to be loved, that child still tries to earn affection instead of expecting it. If you grew up walking on eggshells, that child still monitors every change in tone, every silence, every facial expression, ready to protect you before you even see a threat. If you grew up feeling invisible, that child still aches when your partner doesn't notice your effort. And if you grew up with chaos, that child still finds comfort in drama because peace feels unfamiliar. That inner child has never stopped working. They want to keep you safe. But safety for a child often looks like emotional protection, shutting down, hiding feelings, pleasing others, or going numb. These were survival skills then, but they become relationship killers now. The heartbreaking truth is that your inner child is fighting battles that no longer exist. They're responding to ghosts, not your partner. They're reliving old pain through new moments. They're trying to protect you from wounds that healed poorly, not from the person standing in front of you. And until you learn to soothe that younger version of yourself, to tell them you're safe now, you're loved now, you don't have to fight anymore, they'll keep directing your marriage through fear instead of love. What if the real reason your marriage feels heavy, confusing, or repetitive has nothing to do with your partner and everything to do with the parts of yourself you've never healed? What if the biggest transformation your relationship needs isn't a new conversation, a new routine, or a new promise, but a new version of you, one that finally chooses to break the patterns you inherited long before love ever entered your life? Most people think healing means fixing the relationship. They believe if their partner changes, everything will fall into place. But the shocking truth is this: your marriage can only grow to the level that you are healed. You bring your fears, your wounds, your defenses, your triggers, and even your childhood survival habits into every single interaction. And no matter how loving or patient your partner is, they can't undo the patterns you built to survive years before you met them. When you were young, you learned how to cope by hiding your feelings, by pretending you were okay, by becoming helpful, by staying quiet, by avoiding conflict, by pleasing everyone, or by fighting first so you wouldn't hurt later. Those habits protected you then, but they sabotage you now. Healing is not about blaming your parents or your past. It's about realizing you can't build a healthy marriage with a wounded self. What if the distance in your relationship gets smaller the moment you learn to speak your truth without fear? What if the arguments decrease when you learn to regulate your emotions instead of reacting from old pain? What if love becomes easier when you finally believe you deserve it, not because you earned it, but because you exist? Healing yourself is the most powerful gift you can give your marriage, because when you heal, the way you love changes. You stop expecting your partner to soothe wounds they didn't create. You stop taking everything personally. You stop seeing your partner as a threat. You stop repeating the patterns you once swore you hated. You stop operating from fear and start operating from clarity. When you heal, you no longer love with desperation, you love with freedom. You no longer cling, you connect. You no longer argue to win, you communicate to understand. And the moment you step into this healed version of yourself, your marriage finally gets the chance to transform into the partnership it was always meant to be. In the end, every marriage is not just a story of two people. It's a story of two childhoods, two histories, two emotional worlds, trying to learn how to love in ways they were never taught. The patterns we carry are not signs of weakness, but signs of where we were once wounded and where we now have the chance to grow. The truth is, love becomes easier the moment We stop fighting our partner and start understanding ourselves. Healing isn't a punishment. It's an invitation. An invitation to break generational cycles, to free ourselves from old pain, and to finally give our partner the version of us that love has been waiting for. If you want a different marriage, you don't have to start with a different partner. You can start with a different you. Because the moment you heal inwardly, everything around you begins to shift. Thank you for listening with an open heart. May you find the courage to look within, the strength to break old patterns, and the wisdom to choose love over fear. I wish you clarity, peace, and transformation on your journey. Good luck and thank you for being here.